Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechphilly.com, and now columnist for the Jewish Press.
All right, thank you, Rabbi, and I'm having a good time doing all of that. So, well, with us today, we have, we love law enforcement on our show, and I'm a big fan of Law and Order. So we got the law side on our show. Jed Conboy, who's the District Attorney of Montgomery County, which some people might know the city of Amsterdam is located in Montgomery County, and there's about 9-10 towns in Montgomery County.
Yes.
10. So welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and a privilege.
Well, thank you for making the trip. So how are things in terms of law and order? How are things going in Montgomery County?
Well, as with most places, I like to say crime marches on. Prosecution, police work.
Keeps getting work over here. Keeps you a job.
Yeah, it's recession proof.
Yeah. But on the other hand, recession, because it's known upstate New York has a high unemployment rate. Is that, some people say it's no excuse just because you're unemployed, you have to commit a crime. Or is that a factor? The higher the unemployment, do you see the crime going up?
No, I don't think that's as much of a factor as the heroin epidemic right now.
Really?
Yeah. And we in law enforcement have seen this well over a decade, maybe two. These people that are, especially the ones that are addicted to heroin, it's a tough habit, it's an expensive habit, and the only way that you can support it is to steal. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say that at least 75% of the property crimes that I deal with are fueled by heroin addiction.
Really? And how are you dealing with Narcan? Because that brings people out of the heroin? You
want my personal opinion about Narcan?
Yeah.
I'm not very empathetic to heroin addicts.
Mm-hmm.
Heroin is no secret. You're told from day one that heroin is highly addictive, it's a dangerous drug. If you want to get into heroin and you overdose, that's your problem, the way I look at it. And the trouble with the Narcan is you're simply putting the addict back in the same position he was in or she was in before the overdose. There's going to be another overdose.
Well, you think so? Talk about it a little bit. Well, doesn't that take you off of heroin?
It doesn't take you off, but
no.
It brings you out of the overdose situation.
Right.
And it revives you. And then,
but now you're back to to your status quo.
Exactly. So you haven't fixed anything. You've simply prevented a death. And the addict just continues.
It took people off of it.
No. And the addict continues to be a burden on society.
Correct.
Is there any way to get off of heroin, do you know?
Well,
drug treatment.
We have drug treatment court. Some people ascribe to methadone and Suboxone, but that's kind of a replacement. And although I've never had any personal experience with any of these things.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is. I'm told by the experts that once you start methadone, it's much more difficult to get yourself off of that than heroin. The withdrawal from methadone is a lot worse than heroin. But what we have a drug court in Montgomery County, which is fairly successful, where people
deals with only drug crimes.
No, it deals with DWIs and people. We screen people, and we try to differentiate between the person who commits crimes because of the addiction and the person who's a criminal who happens to be addicted. The former, if you remove the addiction, you stop the criminal behavior. The latter, if you remove the addiction, you just have a clean criminal. So we try to bring people in that fit the criteria where you clean them up, get them away from the drugs, the alcohol, they're law-abiding, productive citizens.
All right, so let's go back to your office for a minute, or the state of crime in Montgomery County, I should say. So how is, are you finding, well, tell us about, what you're finding in Montgomery, because you've been there 25 years?
Well, I've been in the office for 33, and I've been the district attorney for 21.
21, so you know the trends. So
right.
You certainly are there a generation where you know trends and how they're going.
We've seen an increase in violent crime lately, knives, box cutters, seem to be the big thing. Petty disputes turn into something much more serious. As I say, we've seen a lot of the property crimes as a result of the heroin addiction. DWIs, I like to think, are on the wane. I was the DWI prosecutor from 1985 to 95, and we would average between 400 and 500 DWI arrests a year in the county. Now we're down under 300 on an average.
Do you attribute that to education or
well,
punishment?
one thing is
Fewer people.
well, yeah, that for
Population
one.
went down.
But I can just tell you from my own experience with my daughter, who is now 27 years old, I think that the younger generation has taken the designated driver philosophy more to heart. You know, when I was 18, when the drinking age was 18, it was more of a rite of passage to be able to get drunk and drive home. That made you, you know, tough.
Yeah.
Now, I think this generation looks at it more as, look, this is a dangerous thing, and we're going to have a designated driver and avoid any problems.
So education probably
Has some, right. Now, and then you have stricter relicensing laws, which affect some people, but not all. In my experience, if you're a responsible drinker and you go over the line and get caught, well, you're going to be a much more responsible drinker. Instead of 2 or 3 glasses of wine out with dinner, you're going to have 1 and that's it. But the irresponsible drinking drivers continue to be irresponsible. They drive whether or not they've got a license. They'll take anybody's car. They will drink to excess and continue to drive. It has no real impact on them.
And okay, so your office, you have 4 ADAs?
Correct.
And yourself, so there's 5 people in your office.
Right.
And you handle almost 1,000 cases of one type or another in a year.
Well, I could have brought the numbers with me.
It's okay.
One of the factors that we have to deal with is that we have the longest stretch of thruway of any county in the state. You know, we're a long county that runs east to west, and the thruway runs right through the heart of it. So
I remember one of the years the bridge collapsed.
right, the Scary Creek Bridge, yeah. So I think the last time I looked at the numbers, we were doing about 13,000 cases a year off the thruway. Now, the vast majority of them are vehicle and traffic infractions, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on the thruway. You'd be surprised what is transported.
That's county or is that city? When someone's
Just the county, the entire.
But the state.
well, when it gets guys a traffic ticket on the thruway in Montgomery County, where does that go? Which court?
Well, it depends upon where the offense occurs. The thruway runs on the south side of the river in Montgomery County, so you've got the towns of Florida, Root, a little bit of Charleston, Canajoharie, and Minden. So whatever town you get stopped in is where the ticket's prosecuted. But they all end up in my office.
Well, I don't understand. If it's a city, why is it a county offense?
City.
I mean, Florida, for example. If someone does in Florida.
The town of Florida.
Somebody gets it, if you got a ticket in the town of Florida.
But it's on the thruway.
On the thruway.
Yeah.
You would have to answer your ticket in the town of Florida.
Right, good.
Okay, if you, let's say you got off the thruway and you got into the city of Amsterdam, and you got a speeding ticket in the city of Amsterdam, you'd have to answer your ticket
Yeah, but
in the city of Amsterdam.
What Rabbi Simon is trying to say is, if you have a state trooper stopping you on the thruway, and it's in the town of Florida, where does the county have a role in this? Why isn't it just the state trooper dealing with the town clerk or the town justice? And why is the county getting in the middle of it?
Why is my office involved?
Right, well, you're the county.
Because the police simply charge people. They don't prosecute people. It's my office that has to conduct the prosecution.
Well, why doesn't the town, like the town of Colony has a town attorney, and they...
Well, some counties and some towns do designate the town attorney or village attorney
Right.
to prosecute vehicle and traffic infractions. That's not the way we do it in Montgomery County.
Why?
That's a good question.
Because it's always been that way.
That was going to be the answer I was going to give you. It's always been that way, yes.
Okay.
All right, so now I got it. So that's why usually here, that's what I'm saying, the town would deal with it.
See, I've had many more traffic infractions than Rabbi Simon.
Yeah.
So
So
I
you're
know
more familiar.
the court system and how
Right.
it works.
Okay.
He's got a
Yeah.
clean record. You know, me, I'm a little gray.
Yeah.
All right,
So-
so now I got it over here. So
Okay.
that's Ruth to the town.
So, do you feel you have enough ADAs to handle everything, or do you feel that you can expand your office, that things are getting out of hand sometimes, that you might need a fifth or a sixth person?
I think probably every DA's office could use more help, but we have very dedicated people
Yes, you do.
that are willing to
And
to
young
do.
people.
Yeah, well, yeah, by more or less.
They
yeah.
come out of law school, they go to, you don't have the people you have are not too much out of law school.
Well, no, actually, I'm trying to think.
Well, here you have Pam
Ladd.
is a 96 graduate from law school.
Right, but she's older and she's been in the
Right.
office quite a while.
Right, so she's out of law
Yeah.
school 20
Yeah.
years. But,
Sarah Lazinski is our
oh, look at this, Howard.
Howard Asen. Now,
is
there's
a
an interesting.
1970 graduate of Brooklyn Law School. I
Now, you
like
want
that.
this is very interesting.
Right.
Back in 1983, Howard Asen was the district attorney.
Oh,
He hired me to be an assistant district attorney. Then he became county judge.
yeah.
Then he lost the election for county judge. He became Amsterdam city judge. Had to retire this past year because there's a mandatory retirement age of 70. And then one of my assistants, William Mysick, took over the assistant city court job, so I had a vacancy. And
Oh,
I
the
hired
Howard.
Howard. 33 years later, I end up
Switch,
hiring the
yeah.
guy who hired me.
So that's how it works. So but you are elected yourself.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
You're elected, but you get to hire whoever you want, an ADA?
Yes.
You
That's
don't,
the
doesn't have to
system.
clear the county legislature
No,
or anything.
no, they serve at the pleasure of the district attorney.
There you go.
I don't like that
But it's-
phrase, but that's
It's
essentially
a
what
term
it
of
is.
art.
Yeah.
Yes. How come, all right, there are some DA's offices that are structured differently than yours. Now, I mentioned law and order in the very beginning, and you hear of the major crimes unit,
Right.
and you hear of the community engagement unit, the special victims unit. You don't have that.
No,
Why?
because we have 5 people.
But-
We don't have 500 people.
But why don't you have someone who specializes in these types of crimes?
We do have a DWI prosecutor.
Yeah.
Because that is funded by the Stop DWI program. Now, Sarah Lazinski, part of her functions is what we call CARP. There's a grant for crimes against revenue prosecution, so tax law violations, welfare fraud, unemployment insurance, she handles those. Essentially, though, I handle all the felonies other than the DWI felonies. That's
You
handled by-
personally, you're not just supervising, you're actually prosecuting, you're
I-
on the job, meaning
Yes.
of
I do.
hands-on, you meaning?
Right.
Oh, he's in the courtroom.
When in 1996, when the death penalty was first enacted, I went to a 3-day seminar, and at one of the lunches, they put a bunch of district attorneys at the same table. So we got talking, and one of them, they're all from the larger offices, and the one guy says, "Hey, who's your felony trial man?" I said, "I am." And he kind of chuckled. "Yeah, okay, who's your felony trial man?" I said, "I am." And he's, "Look, listen to this guy. He claims he tries his own felonies." Well, I do.
And who's your cyber crimes guy? You.
That's me.
You.
Yeah.
Who's your health fraud unit guy? You.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
So you have, you can get specialized in, asset forfeiture. Do you ever have to call in the state police because there's a case in your county that overwhelms you, and that you need the state police to do the investigatory?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they do a lot of work in the investigation. They don't do the prosecution.
Right.
But we're working on a case right now with the state police where they are tracking funds that have been extracted from a bank account here in New York, and the person it's almost like setting up dummy corporations. Has put the money in all different bank accounts, and now that person has moved to the state of Florida, but we're trying to track them. Another thing that we and all the police agency use is the Forensic Identification Unit, CSI.
Yeah.
They process and all the major crime scenes, collect the evidence, preserve the evidence, and without them, we'd all be lost on the major cases.
Okay, so you don't, how, do you watch these TV crime dramas?
No. I used to watch Law and Order back in the day, and I watched Hill Street Blues, but...
Well, how close is Law and Order to what reality is? Because when I asked the Brooklyn DA's Special Victims Unit director, she said it's dead on.
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, in terms of the negotiations, the give and take with respect to plea negotiations, things like that, it's very accurate. And oddly enough, I got a call from a law school friend of mine whose sister was one of the creative consultants on Law and Order. She was on vacation, and they had a question. Is there a parent-child privilege that would prevent a child from testifying against a parent in grand jury? So he said, well, I think I know who know that. So he called me up, and I said, no, there's no privilege. So I don't know if I made it to the credits or not, but they want to know.
The real
They want it to be accurate.
Yeah. And they do reference upstate cities. They say, oh, we got to catch him in the town of Minden, or we find the guy he ran off. So then all of a sudden, within 20 seconds, they're in the town of Minden.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's the only thing. You have to compress it into an hour.
On the timeline, the days when they come up with different days, the whole case is like within a week from the time the crime's committed to the crime to when it's adjudicated.
Yeah, which is that's like, not
what?
accurate. Yeah. Well, that's kind of like CSI now, because every time I pick a jury, I start off with how many people watch CSI, because that is completely unrealistic.
Right.
You just don't do these kind of things in cases with trace evidence.
Let me ask you about the. Do you have any input into when the town schedules their court days and times so that you can have your people there in the town court?
No.
Do you work with the town judges there?
Well, we try to, but it's pretty much at their pleasure.
Because I see that they're not really at the same time. I mean, they're all.
Well, yeah, they try not to conflict with one another. But if you've got their schedules, you see that a lot of them meet at 7 o'clock at night.
Thursdays.
Yeah, there are a couple of them that
4 o'clock.
meet at 4 o'clock.
Right.
Those
seem to be the popular times.
Yeah, and we have to divvy them up among the assistant DAs so that nobody has to be in two places.
What percentage of your crimes go to trial? Well, usually they say
less than 5.
Really?
In any place, it's impossible to try every case. You don't have enough courts, you don't have enough judges, you don't have enough prosecutors, you don't have enough jurors. You would exhaust the jury pool in a year if you had to try every case. And you just, everything would come to a standstill if you had to.
When you get stopped for, let's say, a speeding ticket, it's usually plea bargained down to parking on the sidewalk.
Depending upon your record and the circumstances of the offense.
There are a lot of people parking on the sidewalk.
This is true.
And I never see anyone parked on the sidewalk.
Well, when you're stopped and those lights are going.
But I always see, but if you look at the plea bargain, a lot of people, so I wonder if I parked on the sidewalk, would I really get a ticket, and what could I plea bargain that down to?
That's as low as you can go.
That's as low as you can go. Okay.
Right. Now, there's a reason for that, though.
Tell me.
Well, first of all, most people who get speeding tickets are not criminals. You've got people that aren't paying attention, they're late for something, they're really good people, but they've had a little, issue.
Right,
okay?
Distraction, yeah.
So, if you have no accident, if it's not an unreasonable speed, if you have no prior convictions, we'll reduce it to a parking on the pavement ticket, as you say. That is a financial decision as much as anything else, because the
I'm waiting for this. I know the answer.
Yeah, the local criminal court gets $15 for every ticket it adjudicates. But when the person pleads guilty to a parking ticket, any fine assessed is also kept by that court. So you have some of these municipalities, especially the ones on the thruway, who depend upon this as a revenue stream.
That's right.
Right.
What about the...
So when you, just back
Well,
to
wait a
your
minute,
county.
But some of this money goes to the state at some point, at
right.
$85 or something. There's like an $85 assessment fee for some tickets.
Well, let's forget about parking for a moment. There's a fine and the $85 surcharge.
Sure.
Everything but $15
Right.
goes to the state. 15 stays here. It used to be there was no surcharge on parking tickets, so the entire amount stayed within the locality. Now there's a $25 surcharge on the parking ticket, so the state gets 25 of that.
They're pound of flesh.
Right.
Yes.
So this, again, just the numbers, if someone's speeding on this throughway in town of Florida, and then you take over the case, and let's say it's a $200,
Fine, yeah, $200.
How does that get divvied up?
Well,
If it's on the parking ticket, let's say they say.
well, first of all, there would never be a $200 fine on the parking because that's an
Right.
illegal fine.
All
But
right.
let's say 100.
All right.
$100 fine, $25 surcharge. The court, town of Florida, is going to get $15 for adjudicating the ticket, $100 for the fine, and then $25
To the state.
surcharge goes to the state.
So they're gonna make.
May you
come
never
on.
know from these things. So that's,
Yeah.
now the other, how much, now I always ask this of public officials, how much do you earn?
Well, it's a public,
It is.
and it's in the paper every year, $154,000.
Okay, so what happens to this overtime or other expenses? Is something that, like you were the highest
Oh.
paid employee.
Okay, and then there was other money on that,
Yeah.
yes. My wife is a state trooper. Actually, she's senior investigator in the forensic identification unit. She has health insurance. The county has health insurance. If you're a county employee and you opt to be on someone else's health insurance, rather than take the county health insurance, at the end of the year, they give you a check
For $5,000.
for
or
what,
something.
well, it depends. I mean, I was single. If I had a family, if I had a whole family and I was on somebody else's
Right.
insurance, I'd get a bigger check. But that's what that other money is.
Okay, so your base salary is
154 and I think 150, or 152.4, I think it was.
152.4, and it
Right.
says that you made 157,425 in
Right.
2015.
So the balance of that is the
The-
insurance
okay,
rebate.
I see. Because there's other, like the sheriff of Montgomery County, you know, he makes 90,000, the county executive, 90,000. You're pulling some good bucks as DA, but you work very hard, I guess, is what you
Well,
would say.
when you're in an office like mine, you're on call 24/7, 365. I've had several vacations cut short.
Why? Because of why? Why can't an ADA take over?
Well,
What do you
when
do?
you've got a double murder,
Yeah.
you know, you really don't want to say to your assistant who's, you know, part-time and
Yeah.
really making peanuts, here, you go take care of that. But especially because if there's going to be a mistake made, I'm going to make it.
Well, except if it's the guy who hired you and then you hired
Right.
him, you got a pretty good number two guy there.
Well, now, yes.
Now, yeah.
But
Just-
still, that is really my responsibility.
It is.
You know, all the major crimes, like I say, I do all the felonies other than the DWI felonies.
All right, so now you have a burgeoning Amish community.
Yes.
How does that impact your office? Because they have a different lifestyle, and is it an Amish or is it Mennonite?
Amish.
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 So you can't take pictures of them, right?
I'm not sure about that. I've never tried to take a picture of them, but I know we've had some issues with vehicle and traffic matters because of the buggies, and you'll have to ask the sheriff this because we have different sects in Montgomery County. We have Palatine and
And
Lancaster.
Lancaster.
And Lancaster. And there was something about the signage
Yes.
on the rear of the buggies that was okay with one group, but not okay with another group. But by and large, you know, and living in St. Johnsville, there are a lot of Amish around me, and they're wonderful. You know, there's no
low
problem.
crime rate, and so
Oh,
there's
no,
zero
no,
crime rate.
No, but there was a case where, and it may not be in Montgomery County, where some Amish kids were abducted.
That was, well, no, abducted in St. Lawrence County, but I had the one where we tried the guy last summer, where over a period of about 7 years, he had sexually abused 6 different Amish boys, 3 from one family, 3 from another, who came to work on his farm. And
So it was a non-Amish guy who
yes, non-Amish.
abused the Amish.
Right.
Yeah.
And I really think he felt that he could do this because first of all, he didn't think they would reveal it to anybody.
Right.
And secondly, if they did reveal it, it wouldn't get outside the Amish community.
Right.
But it did, and then the whole thing blew
And
up
then,
on him.
you know, so you don't have a difficulty in terms of taking mug shots with them, or they don't have telephones, right?
Well, they don't have telephones in their homes,
Yeah.
but they use telephones. Now, for instance, the one family, the one Amish young man who disclosed this, did it on, there's kind of a community phone that they all use. And as long as it's not in their house, they can use it. So he called a friend who was a police chief.
Do they speak German, or do they speak English?
I've only spoken to them in English. Now, whether they speak German among themselves, I don't know.
You don't know. You haven't heard them do a side conversation
No.
and some other.
No.
Let me ask you quickly about this big issue called Raise the Age.
Mhm.
You know, they want to have 16 and 17-year-olds in a different, not tried as adults and tried as juveniles. How do you stand on that? Where do you come down on that?
We already have the youthful offender statute, which covers people from their 16th birthday up until their 19th birthday. And it's not unusual for people in that age range to commit felonies. You know, burglaries, grand larcenies, things like that, non-violent crimes. And they get adjudicated youthful offender. So they really walk away with no criminal record. I understand the philosophy behind Raise the Age, but the legislation that I've read seems to create a whole new bureaucracy that is going to be very, very cumbersome. So, and it allows for some violent felonies to be adjudicated so that there'd be no criminal record, which
Is problematic for you?
yeah, it is. Yeah.
So what would you, so you want to, you like the status quo, you like the way it is now?
Either that or raise the age of the youthful offender
To what?
to maybe 21.
Uh-huh.
Because I guess the studies show that the frontal lobe is not fully developed, so judgment isn't all there when you're that age.
Well, women and men develop differently.
Mhm.
Women mature,
Sooner.
yeah.
Yeah.
Their frontal lobes
Yeah.
mature sooner.
Well, have you ever heard of YOMIC?
Yomic.
YOMIC. Young Male Invincibility Complex.
Oh, okay.
It actually exists. Well, that's why 18-year-olds go in the military. That's why
Okay.
60-year-olds don't go in the military. We've outgrown that. Yeah, run up the hill into enemy fire.
Machine gun,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So, okay, so is the District Attorneys Association against Raise the Age, or?
They're not per se against Raise the Age, but they're concerned about some of the mechanisms
Are
that
they neutral on this so far? Have they taken a position?
they've taken a position, but it's basically with respect to the mechanics and the implementation. As I said, it's very cumbersome the way it's been laid out so far.
Well, this has been very interesting conversation, I
Well,
gotta tell you.
Just as long as you stay out of jail over
Yeah.
Mark over here,
Uh-huh.
out of Montgomery County. Jed, thank you very much for being on The Jewish View. It was enlightening, and I'm sure for ourselves and our viewers, and continue with your good line of work with good success and with good health.
Yes,
Well, thank you very much, Rabbi Simon and Mark. It was a real privilege and a pleasure to be here.
continued success.
Thank you.